What's up guys, welcome to this review of The Current War, a film all about Thomas Edison and his rivalry with George Westinghouse, with Nikola Tesla in there, all about how they wanted to power America and the race to see which one would actually get all of it. So right there on paper, that plot synopsis is very brief what this film is about. It's going to be divisive. It's going to be one of the things I either think is going to be really intriguing and interesting or just really boring and bland. And sadly, it's the latter which happens. It becomes really boring and bland. And I actually think that the film itself could have been really interesting and intriguing. There's a good central story here, but the way the story is told, the presentation of the story, not very good at all. And it's really disappointing because, yeah, I think there's a good film in there somewhere. So the film's only like an hour 45 roughly, but it feels like it's 2.5 hours long. It drags. And it's not that it's slow, it's just everything that's happened. There's no real tension at times. It just feels like he has another scene, he has another scene, he has another scene. They all have certain purposes, but there's not a huge great deal of drama in there. There's no action in there. It just keeps plodding on, telling the story, and it's very bland, very traditional. You can kind of predict what's going to happen. That being said, I do really like the ending. I think the ending of the film is probably the best part of the film, and not just because it was over and I could leave the cinema, but because there are some key points hammered out in the end and in the final scene that I think that just does a really good job of summing everything up and explaining what exactly has happened in a new light, let's say. But the film also tries to be funny. It's not that funny though. The jokes in there don't always come across as jokes. The way that they're delivered, it's like, right, are you trying to be funny? And it just doesn't always work. But that's a really nitpicky, nagging little point. There aren't too many of the jokes in there. This isn't a comedy after all. It's a pretty serious drama biopic, let's say. But let's turn things over to the characters now. And this is where the film really shines, and it's the acting. The acting is really good across the board. Benedict Cumberbatch and Michael Shannon and Tom Holland, them three, great. Nicholas Hoult has a smaller role in there as Nikola Tesla. Yeah, he's putting on a bit of an iffy accent, but he himself is good as well. Sadly, the characters don't feel fully developed or fleshed out. They do a good job of making them all relatable. They do a good job of, particularly with Thomas Edison and George Westinghouse, making them understandable so that neither side's truly considered to be the good guy or the bad guy. That's something I really liked. But everyone else is a bit stereotypical and it's just a bit frustrating. So through the characters, what the film does a good job of is exploring the social situations that they're in, the need for social interaction, as well as creative output and experimentation. It highlights that you can't just be focusing on one element of your life and ignoring the other, and it does a good job of exploring how social and work life interacts and the effects both of them have. And it's quite interesting that way on, but it never fully explores them in too much detail. But let's get into the nitty-gritty, the behind-the-scenes stuff, the production elements, and this is where the film suffers. I'm not going to say it's badly directed. I don't want to criticize the director too much, but I do think there are some really questionable creative choices made by the director of photography in this film, which really hampers how good this film is. So, for example, I think there are way too many close-up shots. Throughout this film, I would say more than 50% of this film is just focused entirely on people's faces. And yeah, they're not bad-looking people by any means, but it does make things very confined, very small. It makes the whole film and the narrative feel really small-scale and focused. That's fine, but to go so much close-up shots, it's distracting, and it makes you wonder, why are you focusing so much on this? Especially when there are certain scenes where there's not a huge deal of drama, there's not a huge deal of tension going on, and it's trying to build it up just by the way that it's filmed. So you could say that's smart filmmaking, trying to build up something with what little material you have, but at the same time it's just not quite working. In addition to this, there are a few too many moving shots, too many shots where the camera's panning or zooming or tilting too much style, I would say. There is an element of style throughout this film, and yeah, it makes the film look interesting, let's say, but it's also at odds with the theme and tone and the mood of this film. This is a biopic, it is a very serious, focused story, so to add all this style, it feels a little like it's clashing with it. It's trying to add some sort of interesting element to something that's not there. I think this film would have been a bit more interesting, a bit more enjoyable had it been a bit more traditional in its filmmaking approach. In terms of cinematography though, the film is really quite a good looking film. There are great sets, great use of lighting, sets the mood and the tone really well. And of course the film all about lighting and electricity, it's very important that you get that right. So a lot of good lighting, very good use of shadows and darkness and light and brightness throughout the film. Gorgeous sets, costumes and props and so on. Sadly, the directing, because of the way that the camera's moving, because of the use of close-up shots, it's really tough to pinpoint where these good moments are. So yeah, it feels like the director and the cinematographer weren't always working in cahoots with each other. And the pacing and the editing, I said that this film's only about an hour 45, but it feels 2.5 hours long. The pacing and the editing, it actually moves pretty briskly at times. It's just that everything's boring and everything feels sluggish still. The pacing and the editing doesn't make this film any more exciting or enjoyable than it is, and I can't quite nail what it is, because again, I think the story here, there is something really interesting about the story. The general idea of the story is a fascinating one. It just hasn't been presented very well. It feels like the directing is constantly trying to pull you away from what's going on. And yeah, everything, the script is there, the directing's there, the cinematography's there. It's as if they're all working on a separate thing and they're not actually working together. So yeah, it's hard to explain. But that's The Current War. I didn't like it. I do think there's a good film in there somewhere, but we won't see it, and it's a shame. But again, the acting's great, cinematography's good, it's a good looking film as long as you're not looking at people's faces for too long. And yeah, there are probably better things in cinemas, although I don't think this film comes out in American cinemas until way later in the year for some reason. And this is actually a 2017 film, it was filmed like 2 years ago, and it's only now being released, so that's interesting. So yeah, it feels like they're just trying to get it out there knowing that it's not great. It's a shame because there's a lot of good talent in this film as well. But that's my review of The Current War. I hope you've liked it. It's probably better than the film itself, and yeah, that's disappointing. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant_Burton. More importantly though, subscribe to my channel, help me grow my channel, help me make new content. If you've got some content you want me to make, leave it in the comments and feedback down below. If you've got thoughts about The Current War, leave it in the comments and feedback down below. And I believe that's everything. Give me a thumbs up as well if you want. But most importantly, subscribe. And until next time, thanks for watching.